Hi, this is Stephanie Hansen with the Makers of Minnesota, and I am going to help you with your strategy for your business in 2021. Are you dreading social media and not sure when you should be posting on Facebook or Instagram? Or maybe you want to reach out to some influencers, but you don't know how to do it? Or maybe you just want someone to actually use your product and create some recipes for you. I am your gal. I've been developing lots of relationships over at stephaniesdish.com, and I can help you get your product into the hands of people that are going to use it and create influence and create buying patterns for people that you can count on as new customers. 2021 is going to get all of a sudden ramped up, and we're going to be moving real fast to capture some of the business opportunities that we lost in 2020. Don't be left out on the cold. Have new followers and new pairs of eyes on your product now. Give me a shout. I'd be happy to help you. I'm at shansen, Hansen, marketing at gmail.com. It's shansenmarketing at gmail.com for small business marketing for things like social media, recipe development, influencer posting, and just general PR help and getting the word out about your products. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Makers of Minnesota podcast, where we talk to cool people doing cool things. I'm Stephanie Hansen, and you maybe have heard about crickets being used as protein. It is a great idea, and it's really starting to catch on. And I'm here with Tammy Mann today, who's the founder of Harmony Cricket Farm. And Tammy, I think you're my third cricket person that I've talked to in the last 3 years on the podcast. It's just becoming such a huge industry. Would you agree?
It is slowly becoming an industry. I'm not going to say huge yet. But that's the goal.
Yes, absolutely. And how did you get into crickets, and what was it about this that really tripped your trigger in terms of this is a business I want to foster?
Well, the introduction and the tripping of the trigger are two different things. So the introduction was a few years ago, training for triathlons, and I'm gluten intolerant, and I was discovering also I struggle with dairy. So whey proteins and things were disagreeing with me. And someone had mentioned they heard people using cricket powder, cricket protein. And just like almost everybody I've told that I eat crickets, I was like, ew, gross. But I thought, what do I have to lose? I researched the value in it. I'm like, this sounds like a great thing. And I tried it. I didn't like the flavor. I was grossed out. It made my smoothie really dark.
Can you describe it? Like when you first had it?
I will describe it. And I'm going to tell you also, they are not all the same. And that's a very important thing to notice and to say, because just like anything, I've had bad wine, which, for me to dump a bottle of wine out means something's bad.
Sure.
And there's different crickets. So my first cricket experience, I ordered online from just wherever I found it first. And it had a very gamey taste that I really was very forward flavor. I could really taste it in my smoothie. And it was really darker than the ones I've come to find. And anyway, it was expensive because, it's a premium product right now. We aren't innovative yet in how we can produce it. So I didn't want to waste my money. So I drank it every day. I plugged my nose and drank it down. And I'm so glad I did, because it was game changing. I was noticeably getting leaner in my gut. And the only variable change was my protein, my drinks in the morning. And I was feeling more energized. I was performing better. I was just feeling it. And I'm not saying this as a salesperson. This was just my personal thing. And
sure.
I thought, what is this? So I started researching why and what's in it on my free time, because I was a full-time creative director. And the more I learned about it, the more I wanted to know. And it just sort of slowly grew in my brain. The catalyst for change, the reason I quit my career and dove into everything to promote crickets, because that's really my goal. It's not to be this cricket empire. It's to be the promoter, the voice for all the cricket manufacturers and producers and farmers. was learning about our global insecurity. You hear about it, you hear, please don't cut down the rainforest, save the animals. You hear all of that. But when you really start seeing the statistics, seeing the numbers, and seeing where we're at as a planet, the reality freaked me out. I'm a mom, and the reality made me think, holy cow, I don't want to be a grandma. This world is not going to be a good place for grandchildren if we keep going the way we're going. What can I do? Because, recycling isn't going to be enough.
Sure.
What can I do? And the everything I learned about crickets was supported a sustainable food solution. Everything I learned about the meat industry freaked me out. I was a meat eater. I became a vegetarian recently. It didn't happen instantly because it takes a long time to wean yourself off a good burger. But thank goodness for things like the veggie burgers out there, because they're really good.
And they're getting so much better than they used to be.
So much better. And honestly, so I'm not just I'm passionate about the food we eat, thinking about where it comes from and sustainability.
So you get that passion, and you decide that you want to be involved in the movement. But at what point did you decide that you didn't want to be growing crickets yourself or farming crickets yourself, that you were going to buy them from another producer?
It's a great question. And it was a matter of a journey. I think at first I thought, boy, if I'm going to do this, I should probably raise crickets, But honestly, the amount of time I spend constantly researching and connecting and promoting and experimenting in the kitchen is already by far over 80 hours a week. When would I have time to raise a cricket? Not only that, it's an art, and I've experimented and tried crickets from around the world. And like we started off with, they're different. And to really be sustainable, and sustainability is more than just how much we use of the planet. Sustainability means it's going to be able to happen over and over and over and over. We need to be able to produce at an amount that brings the price down. Right now in America, except for one company in Texas, XO, we're not producing at enough efficiencies where we can have it at a price where people can afford it. I would love to support local farmers and use their crickets, for example. And I've tried. I've talked to some great ones. There's the 3 Cricketeers. They're doing great crickets. But for me to buy their product to put in, or to buy their crickets to put in my product, I would have to turn around and sell my product at a price people can't afford.
Right.
That's a mess,
You have to be able to be competitive, particularly probably in an online search.
Right. And not only competitive, the other big catalyst to this is it better taste good. I mean, it can't just be okay. And so far, I haven't had a lot of stuff that I thought was really good. That I'd buy twice. I've tried it out of curiosity. I've wanted to like it because of its intention. But to really, love it hasn't been an easy sell. And so back to the cricket thing, I buy my crickets from Bali, from Thailand, from amazing farmers that I've come to know very well, who have been doing it for a long, long time. Their history is hundreds of years deep. They're producing at a scale that allows me to get it at a cheaper price. I struggled with that for a long time because I thought, how is this sustainable? Now we're paying an airplane. We're using fuel, which is horrible. But then I did a little research and broke it down, and the amount of energy we have to spend to heat a facility to grow crickets here in Minnesota, it's actually a wash.
Yeah.
The only win is now I'm getting a large amount. I mindfully only order them once or twice a year in large scale, so it's less airplane. I've come to know my farmers. I can't wait to go visit them. But the magical dream would be if we could figure out a way to, I think, have large farms outside of every major city that are creating the food for our cities, which is the cricket. But that's hopefully not too far in the future, but it's in the future. Just like we have windmills powering our towns,
Sure.
we have cricket farmers feeding our towns.
So at this point, you can get your crickets, you have a flavor profile that you like. How hard is it, though, to be in a business where it's not like you have to evangelize for this product because there's so much stigma around it, and you're a first mover, you're one of a small group of folks that are the first to market. So how much of your time is spent evangelizing crickets versus trying to actually sell your product?
Yeah, it's a lot of time. It's the kind of stuff I find myself doing. My free time is spent there too. My brain is always on it. So I'm always reaching out. I'm not shy to reach out to anybody. So if I find a new cricketer, if I find a new producer, thank goodness for the global internet, we can communicate, and I reach out. What I found is the first year I reached out. And my only intention was to say, hello, how are you doing? What are you doing? What's been working? I'm inspired by you, and never hear back. Now, this past few months, I'm starting to hear from everybody, and it's been really awesome. I've been reading every book I can find on the subject of entomophagy and also on cooking with bugs, not just crickets. Now I'm learning about mealworms, and I'm like, wow, they sound awesome. I never thought those words would come out of my mouth. But so I guess I'm reaching out to people, and finally they're starting to reach back. I'm reaching out to scientists and doctors who are doing research on the true research on the why, the nutrition.
So give me that just in like a bullet pointed list for the listener, because I know the science can get pretty deep in the weeds, but like top 5 reasons I should be eating crickets.
Top 5. Well, we already know the obvious one is the protein. That they boast more protein than meat, and so we'll go with that one. The second reason, I think, there's the obvious one, is the sustainability.
Yep.
The globe can't keep up with what we're doing. Cows emit more gas than all airplanes, buses, cars, trucks on the planet, and our demand for them is increasing, and our population is increasing. We're going to be in a hurting place because we're killing our planet with our food choices. I guess maybe that might be number 1. Number 2, protein. It's a complete protein. So unlike all the other proteins, your body really knows how to use it. And that was what my first learned. I was like, why am I feeling so good when I'm eating this stuff? Well, it's a complete protein where your body doesn't have to figure it out. What am I doing with this stuff? There's magnesium, there's iron, there's all these minerals. There's more B12 in a quarter. I use a quarter scoop in my morning granola or my morning oatmeal or smoothie. And in that quarter scoop, I'm getting some of the key stuff you might not get ever unless you take vitamins, which is another one. Vitamins is food. I think we all know that you get more benefits out of the vitamins you ingest in food than you do by popping a vitamin. And that kind of helps sell the idea of price. It might be a little bit more expensive, but vitamins are expensive.
Yeah.
And if you're eating right, you won't need the vitamins. So, so there's that. How many have I said so far? 3?
I think that's 5.
Oh, okay. Because my last one was going to be, I'm gonna throw a 6 bonus point in, is when you have good crickets, they have a very mild flavor, so it blends well into your food. So why not just put it in there?
Yeah, ease of consumption.
Right.
So now you have this business where you're the cricket evangelist, and you have a cricket powder that's a protein powder, but then you took it one step further and you started making cricket flour and then cricket cookies.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that evolution. Was that an easier way to get crickets into the hands of people than just selling them the powder?
Yeah. And, honestly, it was a little bit more of a mindful step because I didn't want to step on the feet of other cricket makers. And many of them are making protein bars. Almost all of them are making protein bars. And I started doing that because I started going, I'm not really a fan of the protein bars I've tried. I want to make a better one. Two things there. I realized it's a lot of work. It's a lot of production. It's a lot of money. And also I realized there's a lot of people doing it. I want them to do well. Hopefully they'll improve on them, but I want them to do well. No one's making the cookies, and who doesn't love a cookie? So I started with that, and I went to farmers markets, and I was kind of nervous about that because now I'm asking people to buy my product, which I've never done in my life. And what I learned was the fact that my cookies are gluten-free, and I do that because I'm gluten-free, and they're nut-free, which I do because nuts are not sustainable. They use way too much water. Those little things invited people to my booth more than the fact that they have crickets in them. They were willing to overlook the cricket because there aren't a lot of options out there that are gluten-free. So I was feeling good because I'm like, I'm not stepping on the toes of any cricket makers by making cookies. And I'm introducing crickets in a way that is bringing an entire different market to it. It's people who like cookies, and it's people who are gluten-free.
And they tasted really good. That holiday pack that you had over the holidays, it was lovely. Your ginger spice cookie was like one of the favorite cookies I had over the holiday season. I wouldn't have even thought it had any cricket in it. It was delicious.
Right.
And
yeah, I'll share that recipe with people because, I want people to make cookies.
Yes. Want to move it on down the road. So you've got the cookies, the holiday season passed. How did they sell over holiday? Because I know you were also is it Viver, Centro's Provisions Kitchen?
Yeah, and boy, they are great over there. Jamie is awesome. And the interesting and great thing about that place is people are going there to experience different foods. They're not just going there for your average food. So it was going really well. Jamie is a great human. She's a good soundboard for me because I'm testing as I go. So I'm doing small scale productions and going, how's this going? And then we have conversations about it, roasted crickets that are flavored are another big selling item. Again, I don't want to step on the toes of people who are doing it well. And there's a great company in California called Don Baguito, a Latino company. They're doing it from the ancient Mayan ways of, how you treat crickets. They're doing it right. Let them do it. So she and I talk about, though, is how about the cookie dough? How can I get you my cookie dough so people can bake my cookies in their house? They sold well, but I don't want to be in the kitchen all day long. That's really it. So what I'm learning is how can I share my recipes with people so that they can make it?
Oh, I see. So you're going to back off sort of the cooking of the cookies and just really focus more on the flours and the protein powders.
Right. I'm working on trying to get my frozen cookie dough balls to the market.
Cool.
Because the shelf life, my cookies are made from all Minnesota grown organic grains, and I don't add anything in them. So their shelf life, to be a really good cookie, you should eat it within the first week. I don't want it sitting on the shelf for 2 months, which, no retailer wants my cookies if they're going to have that shelf life. So that got me thinking, well, what if I just sold my frozen cookie dough balls? And that's where I'm at. I'm in a really cool business class right now for entrepreneurs, and I'm working on a business model to get my frozen gluten-free cookie balls, chocolate chirps only. I'm just going to do one flavor in the freezer section because there are no gluten-free cookies in the freezer section. Can you believe that?
No, but that's a great idea. And it's not a huge leap for somebody that is gluten-free that's searching for alternative grain to try cricket. I think that person is probably more of an adventurous consumer anyway, because they have to be.
Right.
So it sounds like it's a super good fit. Tell me about the class you're taking. Where is it and how'd you learn about it?
It's called ILT. And I learned about it, I was on, I'm in the Minnesota grown.
Uh-huh.
I'm also in that. And somehow between the two of them on LinkedIn, I saw a post for this. And that back in my former life, I was creative director. And when I was creative director, I owned a creative agency. And this one gentleman who started ILT was a client of mine. So I follow him and all of a sudden I'm like, what is this ILT? And I read about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can really benefit from this. It's a cohort group of entrepreneurs and over 150 people, applied for it. 42 people got in, and it's intense. It's 4 hours, 1 night a week with 8 hours of homework, but it's really awesome. It keeps you accountable and you're learning. Because one thing I'm learning, sadly, is all of my investigations on the cricket companies I've found and loved on Instagram. I'm like, where did they go? All of a sudden they're gone. Or I go to their website and it says, we're gone. And I'm like, that's really sad, because people are doing all this work to build a business and then they're quitting, probably because it's not profitable.
Right.
And so there's an opportunity here. And for me, it's like, how can I champion these people? How can I get crickets into the Americans' households and change their perceptions? So that's what I'm working on now. It's a little bit bigger than cookies.
So much of what I feel like your skill set is, like you're great at branding. Your logo is really well done. You understand how to talk about products and product development. So I like the idea that you're moving into this space, because I think if you're going to be the cricket evangelist and you can have a product that you're proud of and make money doing what you love, isn't that like the goal, right?
Right. And I think even bigger, back to why I quit my job, is my goal is to help this world be a better place, to leave it better. And
how did you get there? Were you just feeling depleted by having been in an advertising environment for 20 some years? And
no, I actually love that world. I'm one of the lucky ones who had a career. I still do creative work, freelancing, and sometimes more. And heavens, it's been creative building this business. It's just, I think I always had a little spot in my heart. I owned 2 creative agencies, so I've always been entrepreneurial, but I've always wanted to know how I can do better. How can I help? And back to, you hear all the statistics, you hear all these things, and I've always felt kind of helpless. Like, sure, I recycle. I'm careful about how much water I use. That certainly doesn't seem like much. And this kind of just formulated itself, and I'm learning that when I talk to people, I don't want to say I change their minds, but I have good conversations on how might we change the way you feel about a bug, it's just enlightening every day.
One thing that strikes me about what you're doing too is this is your third act, I think, as we'll call it, or would you say it's your second or your third act?
You mean in my career?
Yeah.
I would say, probably my first act was creative. Mm-hmm. Second act is this. What this is kind of growing and evolving.
Yeah. And so many people in particular right now, because of the COVID environment, feel like they're seeking. Mm-hmm. It's really been a heavy time for lots of folks, and people are evaluating, what am I doing? Why am I doing it? What's the why? Where am I going? When this cloud lifts, will I be prepared and poised for the next, 10 years of my life? And I like that because you're entrepreneurial and you're throwing caution kind of to the wind and moving into the next thing. I think that's brave.
Yeah, thank you. Some might say crazy.
No, I don't think so.
Brave is good.
Well, and if I think about my career has always been I had a whole business life, and then I had this whole broadcast life, which I was neither trained for nor have experience in, really, other than that I just decided I was going to start doing things.
Well, good for you.
Yeah. And I think my next act, I'm working on, trying to put a book together, and that's interesting too. It just, you sort of follow your heart, and your passions push you into directions that you probably never saw coming.
Right.
When we think about your protein powder and we think about your flour, what are some of the uses for cricket flour? Because you sent me some, and I have it, and I'm just starting to get into this sort of sourdough baking world, and how should I be using your flour?
Yeah, that's a great segue into a lot of conversations. But I literally just started my life partner has been a fantastic partner in a bazillion ways when it comes to supporting my mission here. And the one thing that I just did a 2-week road trip with my kids because my daughter had to move to California for school.
Sure.
Actually, I have to live there now, even though they sit in a room. And in that road trip, I traveled with my powder.
Right.
And I was like, how can I use this more? Because I know my goal is to at least have a quarter cup in me a day. How do I do that conveniently? And then I thought, well, that's kind of a really good question that I need to start figuring out. And so what I started doing was I call it maybe food hacking. I was like, well, we're going to go to Starbucks every day. Our morning started with, breakfast. And in most places that meant Starbucks. My son would get, a smoothie and I'd get a bowl of oatmeal or something. You can put cricket flour in that. Just put it in there, stir it up. It blends right in if it's good cricket flour. Don't use the weird stuff. And but for baking, it's a 1-to-2 ratio. And I just bought, I've ordered so many great cooking with bug cookbooks that I'm, learning how to become better at it because I'm only a year in myself. But I use a third. So whatever flour you use, I replace a third of it with my cricket.
Okay, that's great. Because I can see, I love the idea of a cricket cracker.
Mm-hmm.
Something that you can have 2 or 4, and get your cricket for the day.
Right, and it's I love that too because it's a savory, and I've made some. I just went online and Googled because I'm gluten free. I Googled gluten-free cracker recipes.
Yep.
And I used different seeds and things, and I tried using cricket. So it's doable. And I think, so what I'm starting to do, I literally just added a button on my web. I'm going to start sharing recipes with people on how to use crickets. I shared my first ones are smoothies because that's what I started with, but I'm exploring meals because I'm also, I went from meat eater to non-meat eater, which means how do I incorporate more cricket? Because if I was just vegan, I would be missing out on lots of nutrients. I want to have cricket. So I'm kind of pulling that in.
I would think you could use it as a binder for burgers, like bean burgers and.
Mm-hmm. I did make a great burger, and there's many variations, but one of them that I made, I used squash. I have the recipe and I'll be posting it on my website, but corn, black bean, squash, all those things kind of squish together and help hold it in. And then the cricket flour kind of gives it a strong consistency.
Yum.
And I tried to make an entire meal for my family where everything, the salad had chickpeas with roasted cricket. I made a soup that was a mushroom based and it had cricket in it. You didn't see it because it was a powder. And then I made the burger. So it was a very big meal and it was really yummy. And, I'm by no means a chef. I think it'd be really fun to play with somebody who really knows how to cook and learn, but I'm not afraid to try, and I'm playing with that. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to take your cue and I will experiment and let you know what I find as I.
Yeah, definitely share. And I keep saying that when I post, I'm like, what are you guys doing? And I like to say, and I hear crickets.
People do not like to share that kind of information. Mm-hmm. And I work with a couple of brands and they're always like, well, let's see, what our customers' favorite chocolate is. It's like, no, people don't want to tell you that. They want you to do the work. They don't want to do the work for you.
Right. And, here's the exciting thing. I have some great farmers in Minnesota that are growing my grains. And we're working right now on a formula for a gluten-free, ready-to-use baking flour. And it will have cricket in it. So you won't have to think about it. You will just be able to bake with it.
Oh, I love that idea. A real revolution in the gluten-free baking world was Thomas Keller's flour that he engineered called 1 Cup. I don't know if you've ever cooked with it.
No, I keep trying Bob's Red Mill.
Yeah, it's called 1 Cup, and it's not cheap, but it is a direct substitute for white flour. So it's 1-to-1, whatever your ratios are. And it really is the closest in texture, in feel, mouthfeel, flavor to what would be traditional white flour, but it's not. It's gluten-free.
Oh, I'll have to look at it. I do study the ingredients in most of them, but my goals are that the ingredients are sustainable, that they're Minnesota grown, and that we're not using things like xanthium gum, which is common ingredient in many of those things. But
I'm looking forward to following you through the next year to see where it all goes. People can follow you on Instagram, and how can they order your product?
They can go to harmonycricket.farm. That's where it is.
And harmonycricket.farm. I just want to emphasize the .farm because I had an email that kicked back to me, and it took me the longest time to figure out why I did it. And then I'm like, oh, it's .farm, not .com, you dope.
Yeah. So I didn't want to be in the .com world.
Harmonycricket.farm.
And if they want to follow La Cricket Queen on Instagram, I'm trying to share this morning I did a oatmeal story, and I have a good friend, and she's got a company called Orchestra Provisions, and she's making seasonings and flavorings using cricket. So I used some of her flavors in my oatmeal, and then I used a 1/4 scoop of my cricket flour, and I here's the nutritional benefits of oatmeal, and I broke it down. And then I showed next to it, now here's what it looks like when you add the cricket. And so people can start to see the profile differences and maybe understand why.
Yeah.
It's so good to do. So if you follow me on Instagram, hopefully you can learn a thing or two.
All right. Well, thanks for being our guest today, Tammy. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Tammy Mann with harmonycricket.farm.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay. We'll talk soon.
Yep. Bye-bye.